Hello. How are we doing? That's good. Let's start this thing. Okay, we will start with a game between Simon Williams and uh, Makola Mackle and Simon. So he plays the French. So that's kind of why I did this one. Was he played the French in a recent tournament. Okay. E4, E6, D4, and then D5. Knight F3, Knight F, and he played. This is the classic variation. There's the I think this is a different line than Winier. This is the Rubinstein variation of the French, and I'm thinking also this is a somewhat of a Tarrasch, if you want to just simplify. So he went more towards the classical variation. E5, Knight F, D7, F4, C5, Knight F3, and Knight C6. Bishop E3 is a move that could be played. There's also which you have to be on guard. You can't play this gambit. This potentially would gambit a pawn, so you can't do that. This still potentially is playable, but why would you want to give up your good bishop? So this bishop E4 or E3 makes sense to try to, but you have to always keep in mind maybe bishop E2, then takes, knight takes, knight takes, queen takes, and bishop C5 might actually be a playable move. So you have to always consider your opponent's moves. Now, you really can't castle kingside. So we can actually castle, and then bishop here. Bishop could actually take, queen could take, and then you have to be careful knight, because now we're threatening here. So he could castle queenside, and about equal. This move, now that I think about it, bishop e3 might have been a slighted accurate move. Bishop e6 and castle. So now we're safe. Bishop d2 or e2, b4. Castling kingside is actually a really strong move for white, because yes, we have bishop here, rook a d8, a6 is a playable move with pressure of a3, trying to get our queenside expansion. Queen c7 to get off of this file here, and king h1 for white, rook a c8, and now we're trying to open up the position. So, but what he actually did was castle queenside, which isn't really the best idea in this line. He walks right into C4, and now everything's going to break loose pretty soon. F5, B4, F takes, F takes, takes. He played knight to B4. I'm liking rook B8. Yes, knight D6. If he takes, it takes. But now you got this monster of an attack coming on your position. If he plays here, you have this pawn. You got Alfred H pawn. So he actually played knight b4, which was a slight inaccurate move. Bishop g5 is a really strong move. Rook b8. Bishop takes is actually a move that's potentially playable. Oops. Like if takes here, king there takes. If king takes here, we have rook and oops, sorry, rook takes. And so this is actually pretty much a strong position for us. One thing we have that our opponent doesn't have is king safety. So king safety is very vital. Rook knight to c3 was a blunder. You don't want to do that. You need to have taken the bishop first. See, queen b6 now is going for crunch. If bishop takes, knight takes check. If he takes here, it's mate. b3 is actually also losing because of knight takes, a6 check, c takes b, and knight c3. You can actually take, and that would be mate. He played knight a6. I don't know why he did that. This is actually a much better move. If he takes here, I kind of understand slightly here. Bishop. And now it's hard to chase the king down. e6 takes, queen takes. You're down material. Actually, I think this would be double check. that's what it is. You take there. Okay. We'll go over it. Let's see how we're doing. We'll go over an endgame now. Let's do it to it. Let me set this up here. Alrighty. Black has a king on h8. White has a pawn on d4. And the king on f. It's white to move. And now, because we made it one pawn up, we could pass the move here. And that pawn comes up the board. So even though the triangle is here and it's our move to pass, and he does that, and he keeps in the triangle. Tries to keep in the triangle. He keeps in the triangle, and yes, he makes us have the opposition. But what we can do, because we can just pass the opposition with a move. That's why you have to be like one square ahead of your pawn. You know, like how this pawn here. If you're sorry, 2 squares ahead of the pawn. Even if it is your turn, you can pass it with d5, and whatever your opponent plays, then it comes up the board. So it only works if if you can stop them from getting right here. If you could stop white from getting in here. If white did this here, then this potentially would be a draw here. Because you're in the box. Do you see that? That'd be a draw. Still me. But because we just kept pushing and we didn't move right here, we kept making him have to make the box. And especially the light squares. And yes, it would have been our turn, but here it would have been a draw, and here it's winning. Isn't that interesting? Because you can then go d5. I know I'm repeating again, but it's very important. And then you push, and up the board you go. So just keep that in mind when you're doing those things. Let's see here. Here we go. Okay, let's board edit. Okay, let's just move the king over here. Move the king here. White to move. Surprisingly, this is winning. even though we have the opposition. It's it still loses. So you have to remember that a pawn on the sixth, or for white, a pawn on the sixth always wins, even if the king can get in front of the pawn here. Even though the king can get here, it's still winning if the pawn is on the sixth. The pawn is on the third for black, and the white king can come here. I'll show you. It's the same exact situation if you're wondering for if it's black. And we'll have black to move. Then he moves forward, and then he has to give way, and then you push, and you queen. So either way, for black or for white, it doesn't matter. Same result happens. So if a pawn's here or a pawn's there, it's winning for either side. Board editor. Okay, queen to e1. Queen e8. And pawn move. There we go. White to move and to win here. This is what Jeremy Simon says. This position is easy since white is to move. Move wins by simply marching his king in front of the pawn. So now we push. He goes away. And there's no way to stop this pawn from queening. Okay, and surprisingly, if it's black to move, it's a draw. Black to move and it's a draw. So if black moves, actually let's go, let's move back. Let's see if he moves forward. So that's a draw. And then now, because we have to move like this, we pass the opposition. Gotta be careful. Yeah, you can't come here. This loses. This is a draw. So this come back there, here, and draw. So if it was white to move back here, if it was white to move before it was black, white would be able to come up, and even though he'd be able to get here, black would be able to get there, and even if he got here and black got there, black was here, and white was there, this king, we have this move of a push that passes the opposition. Let me get a drink really quick. second. Did I have it on the right? I had it on the wrong square. That's okay. There we go. Same point though. It's the same example no matter what, even if it was an E or D. But this one, you have to have it on the right square. Okay. Believe it or not, black only has one way to draw, and surprisingly, one way to draw. Do you remember the square idea? If you there's only one way to draw. If you remember the square idea, then you'll know which square to go to. The 4 squares. If you picked D6, you were 100% right. This is actually a draw, because then now the 4 square rule happens. We weren't able to get our king to E4. It controls the vital 3 squares, and so when we try to attack here, he goes there, and then we start the attack. So that's that. And if it's white to move, and I believe we win. I think we have to triangulate, and I think it's still a draw. Because you can't get here, even if you wanted to. It doesn't matter, so I think either way it's a draw. It's a draw either way. So that scenario is kind of interesting. Actually, I want to see if it is a draw. I believe it is, but I might be missing something. Yep, it's a draw. So I was right. Sometimes it's good to just check it with the engine just to make sure. The only time you should do it is when you check, is if you need to check. Don't rely on it like a crutch. I know. You have to do your own. This is sneaking into a winning king and pawn position. By now, you should know when a basic king and pawn versus lone king is lost or drawn. This knowledge allows you to correctly annotate or analyze more complicated situations where the prospect of a pawn exchange forces you to decide whether the resulting position is favorable to you or to your opponent. In this kind of position, which occurs with a set of pawns other than the rook pawns, this right here, with both kings in front of their respected pawns, it is known as a I don't know if I think it's a French word. I'll spell it. Trebuchet. There is not much to learn, since a glance will make everything pretty much clear. Whoever moves is in Zugzwang. He is forced to move away from the pawn, the defending of the pawn, which will result in an absolute loss of king and pawn versus a lone king situation. Thus, if white has the move, this is what happens if white has the move. Then we'll do it if black has the move. King h8, h4, king takes, king h3, king f3, king h2, f4, king g1, king e2, up, and then you go there. So that's what happens if it's black to move. Now we're going to take a look to see what happens if it's white to move. We're going to look to see what happens if it's black to move. So you have to see from both angles of the board, and we'll turn the board so there we go. So it's black. Black has to actually move away from the pawn. Oops, sorry, wrong way. We don't want to go that way. Same exact situation happens. Up the board you go. Yeah, interesting. Let me see who's on. Oh, nothing. Okay. Basically, in this position back here, sorry, right here, Jeremy Silman, hey, how you doing? Jeremy Silman talks that this position, whoever is the move, loses. We'll do, let me see, how's everybody going? Good. Oh. Hey, there you go. One sec, let me get a drink of tea. We'll get into the next one. We're just going over our endgame studies. Okay, we need to set this up now. Okay, king is on. Let's see. So we need a pawn here. Here, move these pawns over there. Need one white pawn here. This is white to move, and this is what Jeremy Silman says. This is a kind of position that sends many players into panic. Who is better? What in the world is going on? Question. Is there anything to grasp on that will enable us to make a quick and easy assumption? The idea of this tells us which can actually help us understand the right path in seemingly a tough position is an important one. So we have to look at this and analyze it. And he says, and we will be searching for such conundrums, which means, of course, I know you guys know what conundrums. It means basically a question, kind of a something that is a puzzling. You know how sometimes you look at a puzzle and you kind of itch your head or your chin and you're like in a conundrum. That means you're thinking about it. Although this all throughout this book he's gonna be teaching us in the present case, this basically conundrum is basically a similar position to the prior one we had with the trebuchet, or I may be pronouncing it wrong. I don't know how to pronounce the French word for it, but it's the whoever's to move position. After the c pawn and h pawn are taken, the result will depend on who forces the other into Zugzwang. So let's play out what Jeremy Soman is talking about. You take here, you take here. Now we get into that very similar one that we had before when the pawns were over here. When the pawns were over here, and whoever was to move when the king was here. When the king was here and the other king was here, whoever was to move, I gotta change the color, sorry. Whoever was to move lost. And so that's what he's saying, that since the black king will be closer to the two center pawns, meaning that he can make the first contact, white will end up a loser in this coming battle. So g5, and then what we do is we go king d3. We remember, if we played this move here, let's see here, or how would we do that? I have to make sure that, oh, he moved in, and because we moved into here, remember the box, it would be different if we played something like she takes, if we played something like this, it'd be a lot different, because then our opponent would be able to be us to move. So you have to actually play d2, and after our oops, sorry, d2. I don't want d2. d3, and now this is a Sklan move. The wrong move to play, of course, we see this is actually a double question mark losing move, because now the squares are different and it's not our turn. But if the squares were the same, like this, it would be his turn to it would be our turn to move and we'd be losing. So it's kind of an interesting thing. You have to always remember, if the same colored squares or if you're in the same colored squares, whoever gets into that square, the other person has to move, the opposition. So d3, knight, king f5, and d4, and now it doesn't matter what he plays, he's going to be losing. So potentially maybe if we played up here, he would take. Always pushing down, and he can actually make contact and then do what he did with the other one and basically win. And we'll do one more and then we'll start into our puzzles. We're going to have a very similar position one. We just have to move the kings a little bit. If it's here, this is right here. If it's white to move, can white win? It doesn't matter who's to move, since the e-pawn falls. In any case, white to move would play queen d6. The real question is, can white win after he captures black's pawn? Using your understanding of the king and pawn versus lone king, you should also assert that the endgame is drawn, since black will get a position where the king is in front of his pawn. but black can gain the opposition, which is good for black, and hold the game. Let's say now, okay, he's saying if it's white to move, potentially it doesn't matter because we can get in front, and this is what he's talking about here. Now we're gonna do a board analysis where same position. I think, let me see here. Perfect. Here. It's gonna be black to move. There's only one, oops, I have to turn the board. He did it from both sides. There's only one move that draws for black. Can you kind of put your endgame chess cap on? One of the your thinking cap, endgame chess thinking cap, and say which one is what is the move that draws for black? It's black to move. There's only one move that draws for black. Yeah, exactly. You're right. That's right, because when you play here, there you go. That's it. Excellent work. If you played here, then what would happen is you'd have to give way. So it's one of those things. If you don't know the four corners rule, I call it the four corners of the same color, you wouldn't be able to solve this, because it's how you can tell who is to move. Because what black did is pass the move to white, and then when white took, there was the corners again, the four corners. But this time, because it's white to move, it's going to end up being a draw. And here it comes up, over, back, up, and it's a draw. Okay, we will start into our tactics. So are we ready? Are we ready? Okay, let's do it to it. Yeah, the big joke is the thing is we were born ready, right? That's the big joke. Okay, dokie. Let's see here. I first am looking at a pattern. If we play bishop b5, bishop b5, if queen takes b5, rook d8 is actually mate. So bishop b5, if bishop takes f2, rook d8 is still mate. So bishop d5, or sorry, b5. Bishop b5. Castles. So I'm looking at castles. Kingside for black. Bishop, let me see if we play bishop b5. We castle. Taking a look at if queen takes c5. Knight takes c5, bishop b5, and castles. Bishop takes c6, and b takes c6. That wouldn't work. There was a killer tactic that Ginger GM had on today on one of his YouTube things, and it was that there was a very similar type of setup here, but the queen wasn't here. The queen was over here, and it was castled, and it was really cool. It was one of his killer tactic things. If you're interested in a really cool tactic, that's a really good one there. Let me see here. See, our whole basis of a tactic is trying to get rook d8 mate. That's our whole basis on this tactic. So we have to make it so that rook d8 would actually work here. Oh, g6. Okay, let's take bishop g6. Let's take a look here. Bishop g6. Let's see what would be a line. Well, castles probably. Castles would be a good one. Then bishop takes f7. Check. Rook takes f7. Then we have rook d8 check. And then when rook f8, you can maybe I'm missing something here. Trying to think. Let me see. So bishop g6, castles. Yeah, that's what I was looking at. See, okay. Okay, castles. I know it works. I'm just trying to let me see here. So bishop g6, castles. I know it works. Sometimes it just takes. Oh, maybe is that. Okay, that's. Why doesn't bishop? There has to be a reason that this doesn't work. Why doesn't castles? So takes, rotates. This half, bishop takes. Okay. Oops. I thought for sure that I calculated that out. I thought that would have worked. So h6 here, and then we pick up the queen. Yeah, that was not a good one. That was my bad. I tried to visualize that too, but I didn't think it actually worked. I thought he would actually take after that queen takes stuff, but I had to remember that he had the castle, so we had the move we needed to pass the baton to our opponent. Yeah, I got allergies from doing the grass outside, so it's got a slight headache. So I'm got the allergy headache. So I'm trying Try not to let it affect my calculation. Six. I do see that idea. Rook takes c5, or b b takes c5, and if d takes c5, we have rook takes d1. Let me see. Trying to think here, let me see. Hey. Hey, Lord's Courage, how you doing? I'm wondering if it's not, oh, good. Oh, not D3, C3. Oops, sorry about that. Hey, you're putting it at the same time. Nice. We have to take it one step further. And I gotta take it a little further out. B takes C3, and then rook B5 check, and king A1, and queen takes A3. We do have to figure one thing. If bishop a5, queen takes c5, c5, rook takes c5, rook takes c5, and do we have enough for that though? I'm thinking, let me see, bishop b6, if rook takes c5, bishop takes c5, if queen takes c5, queen takes c5, d takes c5, and rook takes d1 to check. Thinking that might be the setup. One sec, I have to grab another water. Be right back. got me a water. Alright. So we're all thinking bishop a5. Let's do it. So takes. So rook takes queen. Let's see. Rook takes c5. Rook takes c5. Hold on, let me see if we play queen. No, if we played queen takes c, we'd actually be down material. Queen takes c5, we'd be, because rook takes, so we'd be down material. So rook takes c5 is the only way to actually get a material ahead here. So basically, rook takes c5. Rook takes c5. So that's really the only thing I can see. Let's go with it. There we go. Let me see here. Wow, we don't have time to mess around. For sure that is. Wow. That's an Alekhine gun right there. In its finest. This is an Alekhine gun in its finest setup. I'm trying to figure out if rook takes f2 isn't something. So rook takes f2 check. King takes f2. Queen c2. King f1. King f1. Queen d1. Check. I'm wondering if we have to sacrifice. G5. Rook takes H7 check, and king to G7, and I believe that at that point he would actually be losing. So we'd be losing. Rook takes F2 check. Let's check out that, because with our first line that we were kind of looking at, because we got to see if we can't somehow get a perpetual here. Rook takes F2, king takes F2, king takes F2, queen C2, king F, queen D3, king F4, queen D4, and I think we might actually get a perpetual here. I think there's a perpet here. I'm gonna go with 360 on this one. Okay. C2, if king E1, queen C2, if king E2, queen C2, if king E3, queen C3, if king E4, queen C4, check, king E5, queen C5, check, if he, yeah, queen B2, queen B2, king E2, check, queen B2, check, king E3. Well, I think I see what this is. King B. Then if he plays king E1, we can go queen B1 check. If he goes king D2, we can play queen takes A2 check, and we can gobble some material up. I'm liking that. Ooh, okay. Not loving that now. Okay, now we can't actually go queen B1. We can't go queen B1 because he'll intercept at that point. Queen B6 check, and if king F1, king F1, queen B1 check. If king G2, queen takes A2, queen takes A2 check, and we try to start gobbling. We just try to go for a perpetual here. Yeah, I'm gonna go with that one on you with you. Let's see here. what did I put in there? So king f1. So he went king f1. I was thinking king. It says king f1. King. I should do 2. King b2 or king c6. I think we have to stick with queen b2 here, check, for one reason, so that if king goes to g1 again, we have queen b6 check. I think we have to stick with b2, because if we tried queen c6 check, he'll go king to I guess he wouldn't have to, would he? King c6. If king g1, queen b6 check. But there has to be a reason why that doesn't work. I'm gotta think about it for a second. Let me think here. So queen 6. If he goes king g1, g2, or sorry, g1, we could go back to checking. Queen b2, king f2. Boy, stumped here. Boy, I'm stumped. Let's try queen b2. Check. King f2. Queen c3. Check. King e4. Queen c4. So we were right. Let's see the continuation on this. I think it's perpetual.
I'm just looking to see why queen c6 was wrong. Ah, that's the reason. So he tricks us with this. King f3. And when we play here, he goes king f2. King f3. King c6. King f2. Wait a second, rook, that's the reason. Rook e4. Blocks. So we have to stay. Okay. We figured out why queen c6 wasn't right though. Because eventually what would happen is the rook would intercept. So we can't have that. Let me see here. Queen d8, check. King a7. Queen a7. Queen a5, check. King b8. Queen d8, check. Trying to figure out to see if there's a way to win here. I don't think there's a way to win with it. Let me see. Just try and just give me a second here. Let me see there. Let's see. Check. No. Queen d8. King a7. Queen d4. Nah, I don't see anything. I don't think there's a way to defend the knight. I think I know this is weird, but I think our best is a perpetual, because I don't know if there's a way to actually get around. See, what we have to do is somehow, by a miracle, get to h3, but queen h3 to guard. But I don't really see a way to do that. I think this is a draw. Queen h4 is a good. That's a good try. Our knight h4 is a good try. Lord Scourge is our courage. Sorry. Queen to h1 is mate. That was a good effort there. Well, it was actually in that line if we played king f1. Oh, I guess that potentially could. Well, then we have queen takes g2, check, and king e1. And he should. Then they'd play queen g1 check, king d2, and queen takes b1. So we would actually lose everything in that line. So I'm thinking the best line is what we just went over here. This here, a perpet. Oops, wrong one. G1. I'm sorry, I got the wrong one here. Here. This is what I mean. Wrong one. So let's go with it. Oh. Oops, sorry, wrong one. Okay. Alright, we'll do a game review. Do this one here. Knight f6. Knight f3. e6. c4. d5. Knight c3. Bishop e7. And then this is kind of like, this is the queen's kind of gambit. It's kind of interesting. If they wanted to do the London system, they could have just played that. This would have been kind of like a London system setup. So b6, e3, bishop b7, c takes d5, e takes d5, and bishop d3. So it's interesting how Foister actually had like an extreme amount of development, but Annie outplayed her. So c5 and castles. So both sides are castle. Now it's going to be who can outplay who. Knight bd7 and rook c1. Knight e4. There's a potential. It looks like you can win a pawn, right? But you really can't because this bishop's guarding. So that nice outpost by Annie for at this moment. Knight d2. The idea is f2 to be able to kick the knight out. Now this plays here. C takes d. Knight takes, and then pawn takes. She does have two hanging pawns, so they're right here. So she'll have to play pretty efficiently. Rook c8. So now this is defended, this is defended, and c4, pawn c4. Bishop f5 is an interesting line. Rook c6, knight c3, d4, e takes d4, c takes d4, and knight to e2 is these bishops are stellar. I like Ashley White in this position, how much power these bishops have. This is a weakness for Annie, and she's going to have to babysit that pawn on d4 for a long while. Queen d5. But now she has actually a really sweet tactic. If let's say you thought about just trying to attack it, this actually wins material here. Rook takes c1 wins material because you're threatening checkmate. So if you took back here, you have mate. So that was a really nice tactic. Bishop h3 is the only way to hold the position together. Rook takes check, not check, rook takes c1, and rook takes c1. g5 to attack the bishop, and then g4 to get rid of this bishop here. Knight f4 is a playable line. Queen to, it says queen f4 or f5. What's wrong with queen e2? I think maybe it's because of this move here. that's the reason there was a problem. So queen f5 to attack here and keep this pressure going. Bishop takes, and then knight takes. So she's gonna win up. She actually, the threat of mate was more important of defending than actually the mate itself. So Annie won a piece by using a tactic to trap the bishop. So bishop takes g4, knight takes g4, and so now if we wanted to, we could potentially try to renew our threat. But first, we would probably want to get rid of our bishop. So knight h3, that sad face. Now we don't have our mating threat anymore. Knight e4 or knight e5. We potentially could lose this pawn here, but we have to always ask ourselves, what is the idea about the knight move? And what we have to consider is, does white or black have any ideas of an attack? Yes, they do. Queen d8, or rook d8 attacks the queen. So if the queen tries to double here, actually, sorry, the queen can't double there. If the queen tries to double here, we actually potentially have, surprisingly, bishop f6. Bishop f6 is actually a really strong line, because the potential threat is knight g5, or potentially knight to knight d3 is actually the threat. So rook here would have to be, well, rook there can't even be played. Maybe here, but then Annie would trade and then go in for this line because she's up a piece. Yes, she's down 2 pawns, but it's a playable line. So rook c7 here to try to win the bishops back. Bishop takes, king takes, and check. Takes. She could try this move here, which would be a kind of shocker. Bishop, but why not go for mate, right? This is actually a winning move right here. This actually wins on the spot. There's really not much that you can do here. You walk right into so let's see if I can find another game. I'll see what we got for people that I can work on here. I'll do Emmanuel Burge, and we'll get another. We did players. We'll do a French defense one. Come on. Let's give it a second. Sometimes it takes a second. There we go. Alright. Okay, let's see. What do we got that we haven't won over yet? Let's see if he's got one more. Ah, sweet. One more page. Ah, here's a good one. This is a French Winier. Oh, sorry. Do you have a game you want to go over? I apologize. Do you have a game you want to go over? I just wanted to put that in there. If you have any games you want to go over, just be sure to put them in, and we'll go over them. D6, D4, D5, Knight C3. Oops, I have to flip the board, sorry. Looking at it from the wrong side of the board. Gotta get rid of that. Bishop B4, E5, C5. So this is basically the main line linear setup. And if it's A3, bishop takes C3, B takes C3, Knight C7, bishop, Queen G4, C takes D4, and Queen takes. So this is a line that Ginger talked about. You could actually, at this point, use the poison pawn variation. Queen C7, Knight B C6, F4, bishop D7, and Queen to D3. C takes and Knight takes here. A3 could be played. Or what's a playable option is actually D4. I believe there's another line. Hold on, let me take a look here. So here. Trying to remember. There's a line that Grandmaster Seven Williams went over. So he takes, that's right. But I'm thinking that the before not ace. It might be. I think it's D5, huh? Or D4. I'm thinking about that. I'm trying to remember. There's this really new line that he's been working on, and it has to do with a D4 push. I'm trying to remember if this is exactly it, or do we castle first? Do we castle first, and then push D4? Well, we'll see what Emmanuel Burge did. Sorry about that. I'm trying to remember some of the. It was like a 13 move line. I have to go over some of my lines again. It's a newer line that Simon's been working on. 95. He takes, check. Knight takes, and then We take, bishop takes. So our bad bishop's gone. So our opponent's stuck with his bad bishop. And we have knights in a closed position. Yeah, we're happy. Rook A2, Rook H8. Let me see here. So Rook guards the pawn. We're trying to see. I noticed that the grandmasters will actually set up an attack on their pieces on their opponent's targets. Like Backyard Chess Professor also has. Jeremy Sima calls it target conscience. What that means is you notice, like when he moved here, of course we really don't have much. We don't really have a plan at this moment to go on. So why not? We see a target. Just bring a rook over, develop your worst piece to its most active square, which is in half open file. So this is actually really good. Now the rook has to, not the rook, the knight has to move to e2, and we pick up a pawn. So rook takes, knight takes. He does have this massive pawn chain that we have to think about, but we have check now, and we could. He actually played a1. See, the whole basis on this is we want to try to get all of our pieces coordinated to their most optimum placement. And at this moment, this would kind of be a good way of doing it. Then we can come here and come in there, and we'd have two really strong knights. Because it's tempting, we can't take here because of this bishop, and we can't come out here or here. So the only really route is a1. h4, knight 1 b3. So now we're going at, see, we see a target, we see an outpost, we land on it and attack the target at the same time. There's nothing more beautiful than that. Bishop f2, king f8. This, we're trying to bring the king in here, the king to the rescue to stop these this pawn advance, mass pawn advance, and king g7. And now we can actually bring our rook in over here and get our pass pawn going. And our goal is to actually get our knights like this here. Yep, beautiful. Now our next goal is trying to get our a rook, maybe something like this here, and get this pawn going. So now we can actually get this pawn rolling. g5. He could potentially try there, but then takes, and pawn takes, so he really can't. We're blessed we have this f7 pawn. Now this knight's an outpost, and we're guarding. We still have our pawns. This king locks down all these pawns here, so we're happy as can be. Rook b1 and knight rook b2. So now what we could actually in theory do, he could sacrifice this this pawn here if they wanted to go over the pawn, and we can actually push this pawn here if the knight comes back. Rook comes back, sorry. Maybe we don't want to push. Maybe we wouldn't want to play here. See if we can't take advantage of there. And then he could actually try attacking our knight. King can come up trying to do it. Oh, I am my grandmaster teacher actually introduced it to me. It's a kind of we went over a lot of different lines, and we I really learned a lot from the French and the setups. And I don't know, I just like how the French at the right moment, it's kind of a positional slash attacking line. So I just like playing the French. It's so much fun. There's such a variety of different things you can do. Knight E. I'm surprised he didn't go for it. I think now if he went for it, it would be losing. If he actually went for this now. Oops. Hold on, what would be winning here? I just want to see. Ah, I see. Comes back here. Ah, double check. Ooh, ouch. That's not fun. That is not fun. I've played the Dutch before, but it's just not my cup of tea. C1. He takes. C1 check. Yeah. I have to put some more French study lines out there. I'm still in the progress of, you know, exploring all the nuances of the French. Check. Knight check. There we go. Check. Takes. And he actually resigned here, surprisingly. How did you like? I liked how he slowly maneuvered his pawns. He wasn't in too much of a rush to push really hard. He actually did a lot of positional moving first. And he didn't let this pawn storm over here, we'll go back, when the avalanche of pawns, he didn't let this here get it, push him around, Emmanuel around. Emmanuel made up a plan and stuck with it, and his plan was basically, it's a fight to win, of course, but he knew that his rook and knight were stronger, and his king would be able to hold back this armada of pieces. And if you notice, the bishop is a dark square bishop, right? How many pieces are on light squares for black? All of them. So this bishop in Jeremy Silman's term would be considered nothing but a tall pawn. And so its whole purpose would be somehow to get yeah. Yeah, it's just he he followed all the principles of how to overpower a bishop, and it was with excellence. He didn't let the fear of this avalanche of pawns stop him from his plan. I guess I'm saying that again, but it's important. A lot of young chess players that start out get fearful if their king gets attacked. They'll start like bringing pieces over. The knight will start flooding over here, and the rook will come here and everything, and they abandon their own plans, and they may actually have a winning position, but because of the power of fear, they lose. And there's really nothing that this move right here, this bishop can't come out of this chain, so it's okay to, or cage as I like to call it, this pawn is okay to advance even though it's on the same color as his bishop, because the bishop can't come out and double attack it. If the king came up to like e2, we can actually check, bring another piece closer into the fight when he comes back. Then we potentially have, we can if we wanted to swing our rook over, play here, or maybe even play an old push. The rook then would have to become passive. This bishop would be ugly. And we could play rook a2 and then get our potentially threatened to win a rook with, let's say he tries this here. We can play here, and let's say he just sticks with it. We play there. He comes up. And now we queen. We can actually queen, double check. So he's actually toast at this point. So he would have to somehow maybe that, but I think that's losing because then the king gets active. So this position is totally losing. So that's why the king can't come to e2. So it's just losing for white at this point. When this bishop got entombed, white's whole life was based on this pawn storm, and the bishop got stuck and basically was not in the fight. So after move basically 36, probably sooner, black was playing with two pieces and white was playing with one, his rook. This bishop's out of play. There's no way this bishop could come into play because of this rook. And with proper over here, we can actually start pushing. White did their best to actually make something of a bad situation here. Like, I don't know, at this point here, it would be tempting to just push here and try to go for it. And then takes, just go for it. Just try to just, you know what, go all in. He played the right move, a3. So that was the right move. I don't think my move wasn't the best. And then he gets to win this. Yeah, I think now it's losing for so you sometimes got to take a second, chill, even in a situation where it kind of looks dire, and just relax and make the right moves. And surprisingly, this is actually winning. looks drawn, but so I think we'll probably call it on this. Do you have any question on the game or anything? On the Emmanuel Berg or the Annie as black and Foister as white move, or the Simon Williams game that we went over? Any of those for ideas that you want to go over? All right, I'll take that as a no. Okay, perfect. Okay, oops, I need to adjust it just a little bit. Wanted to thank you for all logging on and helping. We're doing good. We'll keep pushing forward. We have to remember that mistakes do not define you. It's how you handle the mistakes that define you as a person and a chess player. So that's how it is. And you have to treasure your victories and learn from your losses. And remember that mistakes do not define you. Sorry, I said that again. If you want, we have to always be on guard for what we think. Like what E. Nightingale, sorry about that, said is got a kind of allergies. Sorry about this. It's just a little bit of that. We believe we become what we think about. So like when Rusty told the little engine, if you think you can, you will. If you think you can't, you won't. Either way, you're right. That's basically that's what we become what we think about. And I like Yazer's what Yazer Sarwan, Grandmaster Yazer Sarwan said was, every long journey begins with one small step. So the first small step you have to do is, if you know you need some like lessons, or you need a book that'll help you or something, you figure out what that is, and then you keep pushing forward, and you keep moving upward. And sometimes, you know what, you hit a plateau, like what Bruce Lee says, there are no limits, there are plateaus, and you must not stay there, you must go beyond them. That's where that comes in. And then what you can do to get past that plateau is take what you know and actually apply it. And then I would even say maybe even before that, you have to be willing to do something about it. So maybe to will and to do, then you can take that and apply it to your plateau, to like in the Mickey and Goofy and Donald's Beanstalk one, when they had to help each other get up those steps. That's kind of the plateaus you have to be able to do. Is you may need help from others, and if that's the case, to improve in your play, that's what matters the most, is that we help each other. That's why we're Team Chess Cruncher, because we rely on each other. We're strong when we're together. That's how it works. And let's see, I like what Bruce Lee, he had another quote. He feared not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks with an S, but he feared the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times. So you know what, he didn't fear like somebody who did certain different kicks 10,000, but if you precisely do your kicks, kick, and you get it down, you'll be unstoppable. Same thing with tactics. Takes time. You're not always going to be right. You have to remember that, like what the Lord said, the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Some days are a diamond and some days are a stone. Sometimes you get a blessing of a whole bunch of increase in tactics, and sometimes you have a little hiccup every once in a while. But you know what? You find out what that hiccup was caused by, and you fix it, and then you improve. That's what Tom Thumb told Tango in those two statements that we just went over. But in the end, we always have to remember that the Lord is the center of our, should be the center always of what we're doing about and what we're about. And the one thing that's the hardest thing to get over is in the foregrounds. It's not the one that gets planted in the rocky ground and then sprouts and the sun hits it and then withers away. It's the weedy ground, the one that steals a lot of your time and things that don't help you to improve. And you know what? We're all guilty of that, and we need to refocus down, or I like what the seals and buds say, attention to detail. If you have attention to detail, you won't be losing any time. And if you are losing time and you're wondering where maybe 30 minutes or 40 minutes are going, sometimes it's a good thing to do, and I've been working on is writing down what you've been doing, and you'll find out that sometimes just small little increments of time add up over the day, and it does affect your studies. So just a little hint from your friend Chess Cruncher to actually do that, to think about that. But like when we sit down and study, like Tigger or a chess cruncher, and chess crunchers hang up their coat, they hang up their hat, they sit down and study when most won't. We do, and that makes all the difference. And as Wesley So says for the Lord Jesus, as I say, God bless. I'll see you next time on Chess Cruncher TV. Have a blessed morning, afternoon, and evening, and Lord willing, I'll be back on tomorrow, and we'll do but much better. We'll keep pushing forward, and you know what? Ups and downs are part of life, and we'll keep pushing forward on to getting better and improving. That's the whole point. Go Team Chess Cruncher, hoorah, be blessed, and I'll see you tomorrow. Keep studying and always chess crunching. Bye-bye.